So thanks everyone for jumping on today. So we'll be talking all about shared channels. So really a 30-minute blast for some new functionality that should be hitting your tenants within the next week or two. And I'll be talking more on the intro side of this. I can go more on the technical side if we needed to. So depending on the questions, depending on the things at the end, I can definitely go down more. I got a lot kind of upfront and then on the admin side for how to kind of set this up and where I've seen this start to be used. So first, a little bit about myself. So I am a Microsoft 365 consultant. Basically, I work for a company called Protiviti. I am based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I do a lot of work with usually larger organizations in regulated industries. So I've been dealing a lot with financial services, some healthcare, and insurance companies, usually enterprise and global, with deploying M365 and kind of staying in a compliance and regulatory state. So shared channels one is kind of close to me because I've helped organizations move things externally and develop plans for like guest sharing for teams and environments. And now we have shared channels. So understanding how this works in the overall sharing landscape and how it's going to impact your organization is going to be important, because it absolutely is going to impact your organization. It is not the same configuration. It's not the same as guest sharing, and I'll go through that in the back end. Other than that, I have two wonderful daughters, so hopefully one doesn't kind of walk down here during this, but we should be good. So the kind of roadmap through this is I'll be mainly going through demos. So I kind of left it open. I like to kind of joke through like, what is the agenda they're going to start with? I want to walk through this. So I have this environment set up. I have it ready, and I'll start a little bit at the high level, but again, I want to walk through how to set what it looks like to set it up, what it looks like to communicate inside of this, and really try to keep this demo focused as much as I can. So with that, we've seen the name Microsoft Teams Connect. If you look at some of the branding side of this, and what Teams Connect means is it's the overall scenario of marketing as far as how Teams is going to work externally, right? So Teams Connect is not just shared channels. Teams Connect is the overall architecture of two main parts of it, which is your external or ad hoc collaboration. That could be the shared chats, right? So if I wanted to, if Al and I were federated from a chat perspective, I could message Al and we could have a conversation right inside of Teams, inside a chat, but not really involved in Teams or involved in like joined into my directory. They kind of just that one-to-one chat scenario. And then we have shared channels. So Teams Connect kind of came around when shared channels came into play, and this has been in private preview for a while, but shared channels took a different approach as far as how we want to communicate with people outside and inside your organization. So that's going to be an important part of this, is thinking about shared channels. It's not just external collaboration. That's a heavy part of it, right? That's a big goal of it, but shared channels works just as well with the concepts of internal. So if I want to work inside my organization, not share externally, and share channels within my environment, it can work just as well in that sense. So that's what Teams Connect comes from. Now going into Teams channels, so shared channels is a new channel type. So we've had standard channels at the beginning. That's always been there, where when you create a team, you can create a channel, it creates a folder out in the SharePoint site, and you can communicate and do different things in that channel. We then had private channels get added in, which is the ability for us to restrict the access to that channel outside of the team. So really get a subset of those members to be part of that. That creates its own SharePoint site, but it creates this boundary for people inside of that team. Next one we have is shared channels. So what shared channels gives us is flexibility. It gives us the flexibility to take a channel really as an idea or as an object and say, it doesn't matter as much that it's connected to this team, but I want to work within the construct of this channel within other people in my organization or within people in other organizations. So it's almost like a mini team in a way, but it's in the same hierarchy of your overall team. And the thought would be is I don't always need to share an entire team where it has a full construct. I have all of the different channels. You don't always need that. You might want to say, I have a shared channel for this project. I want to share it with these 10 people. They don't need to be part of the whole thing. They can be both internal and external, and I want them to just work here. So if we think of guest sharing, right, where I invite someone into my team, they'd have access to the whole team. Right? And then so if we want to do a private channel, they'd have access just to that private channel, but they still have to then do what we call tenant switching to do that. But a shared channel really is this concept of I have a channel, it has its own really identity inside of it, and then that channel can move, or it doesn't move, but you can access it regardless of where you are. So if I'm internal, I can get to it without having to have access to the team. If I'm external, I can get access to what I have into the team. And then that's for external, I don't need to switch tenants. That is the biggest part of this is it doesn't use that same guest construct, which is I can share a channel to someone externally, they log in with their account and they pass right in, and they don't create an account in our directory. Okay. So within shared channels, you have two types of sharing. The main one is you have share with people. So I have a channel and I want to share with someone inside my organization or outside my organization, right? So I could have a channel for a training and I want to share it with these 3 people externally and these 3 people internally. I then have basically a channel where I have people internally and externally all just within this channel, and they don't have access to the overall team. So that's I'd say the most common use case. What's kind of newer and what's going to be interesting to see how the option goes with it is sharing with the team. Okay, so let's say I'm on this screenshot here. I'm on the Photon launch team, and I wanted to share this channel to a whole other team. So let's say we want to send it to the marketing leadership team. So the marketing team has their own set of people, but inside of that marketing team, they want to be able to communicate to the Photon training channel. So think of, we have this set of people in Photon training, we have the overall marketing team. The marketing team wants to have access to Photon. So what happens is you can say, I want to share this whole channel with the entire team of marketing leadership. And then when you're in the marketing leadership team, you actually see that channel. So it's the same channel, you just see it in the context of that team that you shared it with. And you can do the same thing by sharing externally. So if I share externally, if I share that team externally, it goes through an approval process, and actually that channel would show up on that external team, and you would have the ability to seamlessly collaborate externally with the channel that you've shared with an overall team in that environment. So what does that look like? I talked about demos. So I want to jump right into what this looks like. So I'm going to start out and kind of paint a picture of this. So to start, I'm logging in to my tenant. So it's drewmadeline.com. And I have created a team. So I've created a team called It's Time to Share. Here's It's Time to Share. And you're going to see this new channel type, this new channel icon, which is a shared channel. So it's a little kind of like almost like horizontal infinity symbol. This means this is a shared channel. You can see, obviously, this is our private channel just to share what it is. But I've created under the team It's Time to Share, I created a new shared channel called New Shared. Now, what I'm going to show, so I can come in here and you can see myself typing. I can talk with myself. This is fun. Now, within this shared channel, though, I have people that are both internal and external. So what I'm going to show you is you see you have Aaron Rodgers here, so he has nothing next to his name. But when we look up here and we look at Magneto, look next to his name, you have the word external. So that word external is going to show that we have an external person in this team. And so we have someone externally added into New Shared, and that person only has access to the shared channel. Now, the power of shared channels is not just the ability to have an external person in there, it's the ability to have that external person in there in the context of their existing tenant. So I switched over here, so I switched to Magneto, so you can see up here on right, I'm logged in as Magneto up here in an organization called Timely. And you're going to see over here on the left under my teams, I have the list of the teams that I'm on within my Timely tenant, but also I have the It's Time to Share and the shared channel called New Shared, and you'll see that it has the external tag on it, which means I'm accessing this channel from an external environment. And if I pull these up right next to each other, snap this over here, snap this over here, you're going to see I come in as Magneto. I can say, hey, what's up, Drew? And from a timing perspective, you'll see it show up right on both sides. So you'll see I'm actively in this tenant as Magneto under New Shared, talking with Drew. And on both sides, I show myself as external if I'm Magneto. And if I look on Magneto side, I see that Drew is external. So it's showing me that I am seamlessly, or I didn't actually log into that tenant. I'm logged into my Timely tenant and communicating with my Matalung tenant within that context. So it's established basically a relationship between these two environments, and Magneto is coming in to my Drew Matalung tenant. So you have this host tenant and you have external people coming into your host tenant. Now, the same can be done with internal. So I could be, if I look on my shared channel side here, I mean, I have Aaron Rodgers. So if I logged in as Aaron would see this functionality in here, and he'd be able to communicate just the same way because we have external people and internal people inside of the shared channel. So I can come in here and I could say share channel, and I could share it with people. I could share this with someone else internally. So I could share this with, let's say, Jordan Speak. He's on my team. Grab Jordan, I can share it with Jordan. This is sharing that this channel internally. So I'm actually adding someone else within my organization to be part of this channel, but not part of the overall team. Right? It's kind of this channel stays within the construct of this team, but it can be shared to those people and shared to external people. And then also it can be shared to other teams. So actually, I've shared this channel to the shared time team. So now if anyone's in the shared time team, they'd also have access to that shared channel. So channels are, this kind of technology makes it a little more agnostic or subjective. That doesn't necessarily, it matters where the channel is, but you could start to use channels as a way to share knowledge and kind of make it more seamless for users to get in and communicate and work on content right inside of that channel construct and not being part of the overall team. Okay. So let me jump back into this because I want to talk kind of around what does this look like to get set up. So the first thing you want to do, and you can go do this today to get ready. So I saw the question coming through, when is it going to be GA? So it's going into public preview this month. GA is going to be farther down in the year, but it will be coming into public preview starting this month. So the message center posts through it. The timing for the session is uncanny. I kept waiting to see. I will tell you, building a demo while it's about to go live. At the same time, it's different, but it's coming to public preview during this month. And to get ready for it, the main thing you can do today is, if you want to have access to this right away, is to configure your teams for public preview. Okay? So you do need to go in and change your preview features for people if they want to have access to this to be enabled. So change that, go to your update policies, change it to enabled, and that would actually give you the ability to, when shared channels hits your environment, that you'll have access to it. Now, everyone does not need in your entire environment to be set to enabled. That is really for channel creation. So you'll then have Teams policies once this is enabled, so that you can, on the bottom right, you're going to see 3 different settings there. So you're going to have create shared channels, share channel with external users, and participate in cross-tenant shared channels. So think of this as, I have the ability to create one. If I'm assigned that Teams policy, I have the ability, if I'm within that, to share to an external user and add them into my shared channel. Or if I wanted to participate externally, so if I wanted to join another shared channel, that would be the third one. So you can do the first one today, and then once it's active, you'll be able to define those policies for users in your organization. So how does this kind of work differently than external access and guest access? So and I'm seeing some of the questions come through around admin, so I'm going to talk a little bit on the admin side here. So Share Channels uses what's called B2B Direct Connect. Share Channels does not use B2B collaboration, and they cannot be used seamlessly. They cannot be used together. So if you have guests accessing Microsoft Teams today, that is going to continue to work, and there is plenty of use cases why you would need those. If you want to use Shared Channels for external access, you'll configure B2B Direct Connect to build a trust relationship with another organization. And you can do that per user, per application. But that's how external people are going to come into Shared Channels. So you can put controls around B2B Direct Connect to do different governance scenarios that you would need for for kind of blocking and managing who can come in and out from these shared channels. They are different than your B2B collaboration, which would be, I want to invite joe@gmail.com to be invited into my team, who will then have access to the whole organization as part of that, right? So they work hand in hand, and so when you're configuring shared channels, you're going to have to go and configure B2B Direct Connect. So what B2B Direct Connect is, to me, it's all about the host tenant. So you have a resource tenant, right? So in that demo, Drew Madeline was the resource tenant. And what I did is I said, I'm Drew Madeline. I want to trust Timely. And on Timely, I need to trust Madeline. So when I established that mutual trust, it then meant that me as Drew could communicate with Magneto, and Magneto would be allowed to come into my environment, and I potentially would be allowed to go into Magneto's environment. And you can kind of establish some details in there. But when you go into this, to prepare when this rolls out, you need to make sure you talk to the right people about B2B Direct Connect in your organization to figure out what settings you want to have if you want to use external access as part of shared channels. And again, think about, as I go through this, it's all about the resource or that home tenant. So the policies, the rules, the security and compliance regulations, it all deals with the home tenant. So if I have DLP, if I have e-discovery, if I have retention, if I have sensitivity labels, all of that is based on the home tenant for people coming in, right? And this is the one that powers shared channels, and you will modify them in the same kind of section that you do your guest access settings today. Now, there are, what are the differences between the two? And I think the core one is the key scenario is you have guests versus not guests. B2B collaboration brings a user into your directory, right? I have a guest account in my directory. So if I'm in that Magneto scenario, Magneto would log into Madelung, and he's logging in to Madelung, and he's using the account that's in the Madelung directory. So he's joining, and then he'd have access to not just Teams, but any of the other B2B collaboration scenarios that you'd need. But they have to switch to that environment, and then they can log in. Direct Connect does not create a directory, an item in your directory tenant. What it does is it passes your information, because you've established that trust, so I don't have to tenant switch. I stay within my Magneto context, my Magneto login, and I can access Madelung information without having to log in, because we built that trust between those two directories. And the way to think about it is when you look in Teams and you have a B2B user, you see the word guest next to them. When you use Direct Connect, you're going to see the word external. So a guest means they can do kind of a lot more, I would say. B2B Direct means that they're an external user kind of just accessing your information. So what that means, and I'm just going to highlight this on the far right, is what does an external participant for Direct Connect do that differs from guest access? So the core one in there is going to be shared. Guests cannot get into shared channels. So if you want to create a shared channel and you want to bring someone externally, it's only going to be through the Direct Connect route. And if you want to use private channels, the external participants will not have access into that. So if you like, it depends on what use case you would want to have to say what type of external access you would be using. So again, if I have a regular channel, non-shared channel, guests cannot get into. Guests can get into that. If I have a shared channel, no guest can get into that. It's kind of a hard lockdown there. So when you're setting this up, actually, I'm just going to go straight to the demo for this one. So when you're setting this up, what you do is you'll go into Azure AD, and there's a setting up in called External Identities. And when you go into External Identities, you have this new page that's out here that's in preview. It's called Cross-Tenant Access Settings. And under Cross-Tenant Access Settings, you have what's considered inbound and outbound access. So depending on the type of communication, right? Think about your home tenant. Who is your home tenant that I'm accessing? People coming inbound or people going outbound to other tenants? Those are the rules that you can put in place. And then what you do is you establish a trust with organizations. So you can see I have Timely as a trust. I've said I trust Timely from my Madelung tenant. And if I went to my Timely tenant, I've said I trust Madelung. And then once you're in there, I've only used default settings. You can get more granular, but you have, I'll just go to inbound here. You have a new section up here called B2B Direct Connect. Okay, so we have B2B Collab and now B2B Direct Connect. When I go into B2B Direct Connect, you have the option right here, oh man, I'm clicking wrong, to say, I want to allow access, and I want to do that for everyone or certain people. So this would be your setting to say, I want to say for this tenant, so for Timely, I could say I allow inbound access to Timely, I don't allow outbound access to Timely. I want this to apply to everyone. I want to apply this only to a specific set of people. You can kind of define what rules you want in there. And then for applications, right, Teams is our application. I definitely recommend, because of the other apps inside of it, if you're going to go down shared channels, make sure you kind of stay with the all app side of it. If you want to get more, it does require AD premium. So I know there was discussion around trust settings. So you can trust MFA, you can trust compliant devices, and you can actually trust hybrid Azure AD joined devices. So it lets you basically say, I trust Timely or Madelung to come in, and if as long as I trust these, they're good to go. And this would mean you have to have the same CA policy set up in your environment. So if I say I'm enforcing MFA, as long as MFA is on their environment, they MFA in, we trust it, and we've defined a specific rule for that. Now, inside of the admin side of this, so kind of how does this, once you start governing it, you can do Teams shared channel administration inside of the Teams admin center. So if you're an admin and you wanted to go report on how many shared channels, you wanted to add or remove people from shared channels, you can do that all through the Teams admin center. Primarily, you're going to be putting in here to define who can create, who can join in Teams policies. That's going to be the main thing you do, and it is going to shared channel creation is going to default to on, but B2B Direct Connect is going to default to off. So depending on which way you want it, right? When it comes, shared channels is going to be on, and it's going to allow you to collaborate internally unless you've turned off B2B, unless someone's wouldn't enable B2B Direct Connect settings. But from the Teams admin side, you're primarily going to be working in the ability to create, join on the Teams policy. There is updated graph support for this, so there are some APIs. If anyone here is a developer that wants to manage this, the graph calls for some of the channel manipulation is there, or it's coming when this goes into preview. The PowerShell side I haven't seen specifically yet, but there is statements of support that we will have ability in the Teams PowerShell module to work on this as well. Okay, so you have the admins. Let's talk about the people that are actually working with this. So you have team owners and you have channel owners. Okay, so team owners are the only ones that can create shared channels. I can't be a member and go and create a shared channel. And the team owner basically defines a lot about the team for that shared channel itself. So if they wanted to stop sharing that channel, if they wanted to remove people from that channel, the team owner is the one that defines that. And that really comes into play if you're doing shared channels to another team, because that team owner needs to accept that access to that channel. So then they can say, basically it goes to a pending invite list. The owner can then come in and approve that channel, and it will join that channel to that team. So the team owners just have a lot of power. The big one is they're the ones that can create them. From a team owner side, if someone deletes a shared channel, they can be restored after a period of time. Now, channel owners are also empowered. So if external people cannot, first of all, external people can't be channel owners. So if I have a shared channel, I can't make someone externally own that. And it manages it almost like a team, I would call it that. If you need to have an owner, so every shared channel has to have an owner. The channel owner can remove and promote people. And if a shared channel actually becomes ownerless, one of the other members will actually be promoted into that role for the shared channel. And then the channel settings by default actually inherit down. So if people the channel wanted to go in and change channel settings, the channel owner can do that. But the channel owner kind of manipulates it while the team owner manipulates the team decisions. So if I wanted to go in and allow gifts or change the ability to delete, right, the channel owner can go do that. And then the other key thing is if I remove someone from, if I remove someone from the team and they're in the shared channel, that does not remove them together. Okay, so they're separate security objects basically. And if I've shared with the team, that would remove that access. But if let's say I added Magneto into the primary team, and then I added Magneto to the shared channel. Sorry, the other way around. If I had Magneto in both from an internal user, actually Aaron Rodgers, use that one because they're internal. I had Aaron on the team, Aaron on the shared channel. I remove Aaron from the team. It won't remove Aaron from the shared channel because they're two separate security objects. So you do have to make sure you understand as a channel owner or team owner what kind of power that you have. So what you see now is this new kind of matrix for team owner versus channel owner. So now you have a shared channel member and a shared channel owner. And you can see all the way on the far right here that shared channel participants can't do anything but leave. They can't go in and like create, edit, add. All a shared channel external person can do is just communicate. And then the shared channel owner gets a little bit more power outside of the shared channel member. So think of it as a hierarchy as you move down in the relationship between shared channels and their parents. So what that looks like is I'm going to jump into it's time to share here. And let me go into manage team first. So what you're going to see on this team is that I only have Drew and Aaron on this team. That's it, just me and Aaron. I have no members or guests that are part of the team, which means that any of my general or standard channel, those are the only be the users that have access to it, and they're both marked as owners. Now, if I go into, let me go into channels actually. If I go into channels, what you're going to see is I now have the new shared channel in here, and I also now have the ability to see shared channels from other teams. So because I haven't shared a channel to this team, I don't see that, but I have the new shared channel in here. If I wanted to add a channel, I could do that. I have my standard team owner settings. What's new, now I can go into my shared channel and click manage channel. Okay. When I click manage channel, what I'm going to see is inside of this channel, I have way more stuff out here. So I have, first of all, I've added myself and Aaron in here because when I shared the channel, I actually shared with the team. I've added Magneto as an external user, and I've added Tiger and Jordan Spieth in as internal users just into the shared channel. And technically, I've shared this channel with the team itself. So right here, which is why Drew and Aaron have access. And I've also shared it with shared time, which is another team, which means these two users in shared time, have access to the shared channel. So me as the team owner, I can go in and manage all of this. As the channel owner, I could also do the same thing. And as a channel owner, I can come in and I can change different things specifically to the channel itself. Okay, so I have full access to do that. You're going to see up here on the right, we have the chain, as I saw someone mentioned, and also the statement that this channel is shared with other members in other organizations. Me as the team owner, channel owner, I can manipulate these to be more granular than you had in the past. If I sent invites out there, you would actually see them in sent invite. So if I invited someone if I wanted to have new shared this channel, if I want to have new shared be added into another team, like someone, let's say this team site wanted to have shared channel added and that this owner requested it. Me as the team owner, I could come in and say, yep, I trust new shared, and then we'd add new shared back into team site, and whoever's in the team site could access this new shared channel. Okay. So kind of, man, 30 minutes is tight. So talking about SharePoint side of this, and I'll definitely stick around for some questions after this. So shared channels and SharePoint. So it does create a new SharePoint site for every shared channel that gets created. And the external person or internal person can access that SharePoint site just like they would any other SharePoint site. It's very similar to a private channel. You can't manage permissions. A key scenario is if I have, because B2B guest access is not enabled, I can't have a file on the shared channel and go share that externally. Because that would technically be bringing a B2B guest into a shared channel, which those two identity structures don't mix. But the external user can come in and completely do whatever they would, just like they would access a regular SharePoint site because they're added into that SharePoint site experience. So what that looks like from a SharePoint site perspective is you have private channels, you have your overall team, and then any standard channels are on your overall SharePoint site. A private channel gets its own SharePoint site, and a shared channel gets its own SharePoint site. And then those can be, I guess they're managed in their own way, but we don't really touch them, right? We're managing them through the channels, not through SharePoint. So what that looks like, I'll give you one quick example there. So if I'm actually going to go into, I'm going to show you here. Oops, it's the wrong SharePoint site. But here is here. Let me go here. SharePoint. So here on the right here, you're going to see I am Magneto, and you're going to see here on the left I am Drew. And what you're going to see is this is a shared channel. So you see this header up here to say it's shared channel. I look over here on the right, it's Magneto. I'm accessing SharePoint just like I would as a normal user, but I don't need to switch context. I'm still logged in as my regular account. I don't need to move. I could come in here, I can work on files, and I could work on files the same way. I could do it in Teams. You can see I'm really accessing them the same way as I would if I was a guest in that environment. Okay. Get to see all of that. Collaborate just the same way you would if your guest account's in there using the same shared channel aspect. So with that, there's a little bit more, and I'll post all of these, the slides up here, but I do want to make sure I touch on the security compliance side of this. So the host is what wins, okay? So depending on what policies I've set up, whoever's coming into that environment, that host tenant rule wins. The team itself, so if a team has a shared channel, the team is still what you manage. The channel inherits stuff down, right? So it's multi-geo aware, it's sensitivity label aware. So if I have a highly sensitive label on the team and that's doing something onto the SharePoint site, the shared channel inherits that, the same with the multi-geo configuration. What's a difference in eDiscovery is that we now actually have a dedicated system mailbox for these. So since it's a separate site, you would, when you do an eDiscovery search against the team, you'll pull back shared channel information. Behind the scenes, it actually has its own mailbox. Legal holds the same. Information barriers are the same. Retention and DLP are the same. So that's all supported inside of shared channels. The monitoring and auditing is a little bit different. So if you are using like the Azure AD sign-in logs, you actually would have to go in and there's a different sign-in log to get it. You basically go to B2B Direct sign-in logs, and you can see all of that. And then lastly, the access reviews and communication compliance are fully supported. All of that just works. So how do you kind of get started? Where I would go with this is it's in public preview this month. It is for internal and external, so don't worry about kind of if you were concerned about the external side, think about the internal side first. The host tenant is the win. The host tenant's the winner. There's no changes to like get rid of guest access. That's still going to be completely a thing. And there's no change to standard or private channels. This is just another channel type to do both internal and external collaboration. I did see a bunch of chats in there. Might have been the fastest 30 minutes I've ever gone through, and it even went 2 minutes long. So there's my email, there's my contact info. That was fast.
I think it's safe to say, Drew, there were an awful lot of questions going.
Yeah, I saw them out. Once I saw you answered some, I'm like, it's not even worth it.
So I've got a few that I think, so a lot of them we were trying to kind of cover off. Some of them, I guess there's quite a few around the limitation around domains. So I guess, like we were talking about earlier, where you limit those domains. So whether it's Teams, whether it's SharePoint, whether it's in Azure AD for the Direct Connect, where do you have to cover off whitelisting domains?
So the domain side of it, if you're using guest access, that doesn't change, right? You'll use the Azure AD guest sharing rules to say who can come in and out from a domain role. B2B Direct Connect is different because you have to establish that trust. So when you trust that, you have to build. You don't have to go whitelist there's no actually like blacklist. It's just whitelist. Like I have to go in and say, I'm going to allow these two domains to talk to each other, and that other domain has to agree with you. So I don't think anyone's going to necessarily keep it open. And at least especially the organization I work with. So You whitelist, you have your domain whitelist that's set up from an Azure AD side for guest sharing. You have your domain whitelist set up in SharePoint for file specific sharing, but that relates, you want to keep those in sync. There's a PowerShell script you can have to keep those two in sync. And then the B2B Direct Connect side, don't think about it as whitelisting or blocklisting. It's simply, I'm going to need to establish a trust with another domain. So you actually go in and I'm going to type in al.com, and that's me deciding that there has to be some visual communication or some conversation to build that trust between that secondary domain.
And fundamentally, you cannot set up external access into a shared channel without doing that step first.
There has to be some activity, unless you literally go all open everyone.
Yeah.
That you have to establish that trust. So there's no just open. So the feedback for everyone, it defaults to off in B2B Direct Connect. So you have to go in and decide which domains you are going to trust, which domains you are going to allow that external collaboration in. And what's the difference here is, I guess the slight difference is, once that's done, the sign-in logs you have to be more aware of, because you don't necessarily know who's logging in from that environment. So with guest tenants, you kind of know. With guest users, you know that these 50 users from this domain have been in my environment. With B2B Direct Connect, it might be 50, it might be 5, it might be 500. They don't have a record in there, only the record from a sign-in log. So I like to think of you building a report to monitor that, so you can build IAM rules against that, but it's instead of doing the directory access, the guest account controls.
Cool. Sounds like there's going to be a lot of opportunity to build new reporting in that space.
For sure, yeah.
So I guess there were quite a few other questions around the difference between the B2B and the Direct Connect, in terms of, if you create a shared channel and then you want to then allow that person that you've shared it with to have access to the team, are you then going to need to share the team with them? Yep. And so they then end up with a B2B
I love this
account.
Question. So I actually set this up in this environment because, so I'm logged in as Timely here. I can actually log in this environment. I could log in as a guest into the Madeline tenant. So there is still the use case for it, that they might need both. It can support both. I think this will be the end user side of it, right? So all the Direct Connect stuff, I think, is the admin side. The change here is going to be for anyone that's using guest access. How do we help the users and help the other organizations understand, and how do we build organizational change management to transition them or keep them? Because in this scenario, like I could log into I could become a guest and log into this Madeline tenant, but if I want to change that, it's up to the Madeline team to decide that. Like they have to, someone on this group has to say, I want to go in and do this. So it doesn't necessarily replace it. Again, they're two separate ideas, two separate ways. If you're using guests today, probably the first thing is going to be to figure out, do we want the way that people are working with guest access today? Like if I'm Magneto, I'm logging into Madeline, is this a problem? Right? Mm-hmm. Is this an issue that we want to solve by saying, let's recreate shared channels here, share with Magneto, and then we can delete the guest accounts in the Madeline tenant? There's no right answer to that one. That's what I think part of this conversation is figuring out in your organization, what do you want to do? I mean, here's Magneto. You can see if I go into the shared time team, I've added myself as a guest in this team. You see, I'm a guest instead of an external access. So I have different rules, different power. This is more powerful in other scenarios, right? I'm part of this team. I can do more, right? I can access other applications. It's a little bit different than simply saying I'm going to log back into my own environment and act in just that shared channel concept. I didn't touch on it, but shared channels, they support applications. So like if you start to build, I didn't put it much in this demo, but there's app support. Some of the limitations are around Planner. So Planner isn't supported yet as part of the public preview. Mm-hmm. Like if you need Planner, you got to come in through a guest. That's an example.
Yeah, I was going to say there's going to be other applications that you need that guest account. So Jan has just put a comment in saying this is interesting for collaboration with externals, but actually probably even more for collaboration internally to avoid creating those extra teams. So I guess there is a an evolution to how we're going to be using this based on how the benefits for internal teams and sharing content in a more structured way, but then also how you then start to bring in those external collaborations and obviously bring in that change management for externals to understand that they actually have to configure something as well, so that they can actually collaborate with your organization in that way.
Yeah, I think a big takeaway, internal is just fine. The people, they don't think of shared channels as just an external change. That's honestly probably lower hanging fruit than the amount of usage you're going to get for shared channels internally.
Yeah.
Like like the internal shared channel usage, that's going to hit you 95% more. Now the use case for external might be really, really important for like one organization, but let's say if you're 10,000 people, you might only have 100 people talking to that organization and 9,900 people talking internally, right? Like they're going to want to use it more. So understanding that internal rules and just using that the way it would normally, that's going to be honestly a bigger win to start. So don't think of it just as external.
Cool. We've still got questions coming in. So sensitivity labels applied internal, external. How will this be impacted for shared channels? So I think you were saying that's the same as
sensitivity labels carry down, right? So if you label the file, if you label the team as sensitive, it falls down. If you have a file that's labeled sensitive on that team, on that shared channel, it's marked as sensitive. All of that kind of cascades down. Think of it as just if you have rules for external access, right? That would cover the B2B Direct usage. So if I'm saying no guests, B2B Direct Connect falls into that realm, like no external access, I should say.
And so last question, I think. Oh, well, there's another one that's just come in that's interesting. But B2B Direct Connect, will that be used for other features other than shared channels in the future?
Yep. So think about B2B Direct Connect as a longer term scenario to empower people to not have to tenant switch. So this is not a Teams function. This is an Azure AD. The same way guest access, you can empower random custom applications that you build as a guest account in your tenant. Direct Connect is going to go down that same route, but it depends. So as you start to establish, that's why under applications, if I had P1, I could actually pick specific applications outside of Teams, right? So it's going to be used more for other solutions to kind of support native identity usage outside of just Teams, but shared channels makes the most sense. And if you think about it, shared channels is also not just Teams, right? It's SharePoint, it's chat, it's all the security and compliance stuff. It's conditional access. So it's more than that. Renaming.
Yeah.
Renaming channels, what is that? I don't know the timing on that. It's supposed to be like, I'm assuming this is channel renames the folder inside of it.
Yeah, I'm assuming this is the making the rename everything rather than just a label.
Yeah, I don't know. It's supposed to be this month, right? I think from the Message Center it's this month. I don't know. Shared channels. So I guess an interesting thing with shared channels is it doesn't create the general folder, actually. So just as a note, like normally if you would it doesn't create any folders by default. You actually have to all go do it yourself. So it wouldn't necessarily rename. It will rename the site accordingly, but I don't know about all the folder stuff.
That might be something that needs to be tested when it comes out.
Yep.
So there's another question in there from Sarah about the external users included in access reviews. So access reviews and I guess entitlements as well are interesting areas to think about for these.
I'm not sure. So I think of access reviews in two ways, right? I think of the SharePoint side of it, where if I have let me go to SharePoint Admin Center, right? If I go in here and I set up a sharing policy for down here, right? Guest access will expire automatically after X period of time. Right? I think of this as one access review, and I think of Azure AD as the other access review. This is not supported, right? This is a guest user. I shared a file with someone or shared a site with someone and in SharePoint, and this would expire that. So this won't relate to it, but the Azure AD side of it, if I go into these access reviews, this stuff is supported. So as long as if you're in this side of the world, it's fine. If you're using the SharePoint side of it, right, it's not using the same SharePoint logic for your directory. They're coming in externally, so they're not necessarily having like access at a point in time. They're having access to the group of that shared channel. I will put the slides up. I skipped over some of the admin ones, Tom. Yeah, some of the, like I have some limits in the graph API calls, but I'll toss them up. I'll toss them up on my site. If there's a place in Teams Nation, I'll put them up there too.
Yeah, so if we can share where you can upload the slides, I'm sure. I'm sure there's going to be carrying on to be many more questions around this area.
Maybe on Teams or Twitter. I mean, I can put that. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, if you want, I was going to say, if you want to put your details up, that would be awesome.
So the last two in there, Samir, Direct Connect, replace an external. No, they're hand in hand. They're just a different way to do it. There is no channel conversion. So if I have a general channel, standard channel, I can't convert it to shared. You have to go create new shared. Think of it as I want to create new.
Yeah. Cool. And I'm just going to drop in the link to the feedback as well, so that we capture feedback on the session, but also feedback on the conference as a whole. So thank you everybody for your questions. Obviously, this subject is a hot topic at the moment. So Drew, well done for taking this on and coping with all of those questions as well. So we'll look forward to seeing the slides shared, and no doubt hearing a lot more about this subject in the coming months. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody.